In the last 3 episodes, we've talked through the vision, the journey, and the culture. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the results, the fourth and final piece of the new paradigm we're proposing to make work not suck.
Make work not suck. Our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steere. Join us each episode and make work not suck. Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
All right, Ryan, we have talked through this new paradigm that we're offering. We started with vision. We talked through the journey. We talked through the culture, and now we're in the fourth and final phase of this new paradigm, the results section, right? And rather than just asking you to unpack it, I think I'll tell you a story to begin with about a client that I was working with. So I was doing a workshop, kind of a multi-day workshop with this client, and it was very evident very quickly that they were a heavily results-oriented company. And we'll talk about this later in terms of the strengths and the blind spots, but it was just super obvious that they didn't have a lot of journey capabilities. Like they hadn't spent a lot of time working on that. And so at some point during the workshop, I kind of called them out for it, not being rude, but just said, you guys are very, very strong on results, which is great. Your challenge is going to be, you're going to be weaker on the journey. And they kind of challenged me a little bit on it. And I was like, well, let me just ask you this. Where are your standard operating procedures? And they kind of sheepishly they wouldn't make eye contact with me. They're just kind of sheepishly looking to each other side to side. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Like you don't have a lot of standard operating procedures, do you? And they're like, no, not so much. I was like, all right, well then where are your process people? Like I've got a whole department here. Who's the process people? The engineers, the people that are really good at developing and implementing process. And again, nobody wants to make eye contact. They're all just kind of sheepishly looking around. And finally, one brave person like kind of raises their hands, and I was like, "Yeah, what are you one of the process people?" And she says, "We fired all the process people because they weren't delivering results." And so I was like, do you think that means that maybe you guys are really strong on results, which isn't bad, but how's that working for you guys? And they were like, well, that's kind of why you're here, because it's not working. It's worked for a while. We were delivering great results, and now we haven't been able to hit results for a couple of years, and we're not quite sure why. And so we'll go into that later, but as we think about just the results section and dig deeper into that, what all is kind of held within that section that we call results?
All right, so results is the physical side when we talk about the psychological.
Yeah, the spiritual, mental, emotional, and now this is physical.
It's physical. It's the things we can touch. It's the things, it's the tangibles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we tend to gravitate towards things, we believe what we can see. This microphone is real, this table's real, I can touch it.
I'm an avatar, but everything else around here is real.
You're AI.
Yes, I am.
You're just what I typed to the computer and generated,
I
right?
am.
But the thing is the results side of it is always what we tend to, because it's what we can touch, feel, see, etc. And when you talk about results from from the beginning of results coming out of culture, that's really your accountability metrics to the people. As you get kind of into the middle of it, that is the operational metrics within that are supposed to balance the journey side of the equation, but it's your KPIs within your departments, et cetera.
Okay.
And then the top part is you're getting back into vision, going around the circle. Those are your financial metrics. Well, we all know how much the financial metrics drive an organization, and everybody's looking at the P&L, everybody's looking at the budget, and that's what we're managing too. The thing is there's not a lot of color in a P&L unless you know how to put the color into a P&L. It's very black and white.
Or red,
Red. Well, yes.
People just losing money, but
yes.
Okay, yeah, not a lot of options, only 3.
But what the results side is where, like in the example of the company you mentioned, is they're so results driven because they're looking to get those tangibles. The problem is at the expense of a journey, you don't have consistency. You don't have it's I have an idea and I act on it. If you've ever worked in an organization, especially if you work under like a founder CEO, they'll have 1,000 ideas a minute and then they'll execute on it and they'll expect a result. And then it's like, oh God, here we go again. Here's another, you want to talk about work sucking.
Yeah.
It worked for a visionary that has 1,000 ideas and they expect every one of them to be implemented and then they wonder why they don't work and then they want to fire everybody.
Yeah.
It's
that
because
experience
they don't have KPIs and metrics that align with the journey in order to produce it. So it's, I have an idea, I expect a result. It didn't work. I have an idea, I expect a result. It didn't work. I have an idea, I expected and assumed a result. It didn't work.
Okay.
Because you're measuring to a tangible as opposed to understanding the journey you're trying to take people through.
All right. So help me understand some examples of where you can be a healthy results company. Because I think my example is maybe an unhealthy example, but have you seen companies that are strong in results, but do it in a good way?
No.
Really?
Results are very important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the financials and the KPIs aren't important at all.
Okay.
But because of the way it talks about, I think this is a future episode, is rotation. Because of where it sits, that is actually going backwards through the wheel. So companies that are very results heavy at the expense of journey, are typically they're very successful in the early phases, like a startup, and they'll hit those reset because you have to hit results in the startup phase.
Sure.
You have to get results to get the company off the ground. But when you start maturing as an organization and you keep trying to just go through that grind, that hustle, that, well, this worked when it was just 3 of us. Why isn't it working when there's 20 of us? We just got to more results, expect more. It doesn't grow and scale.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so
and
off
that's
the ground, yeah. But at scale, no.
Yeah. And that's the client that I was working with. That's what they were experiencing is they had hired a lot of really smart people who just knew how to hustle and knew how to make really impressive things happen. But they just ran out of those people and they kept hiring folks, but those folks didn't know how to train, develop, standardize processes. And so they were churning through their new hires because people would come in and they wouldn't know what to do. They'd thrash around for a year and then leave. And they're like, oh, well, they're just lazy. But it's like, well, but you never trained them. There's no standard operating procedures. And so there was just kind of this hustle grind, figure out a way and make it happen, which had worked for them for several years, but they had gotten to a point where it wasn't working anymore. And their margins were shrinking and they were holding steady on revenue, but the margins, it was harder and harder each time to do the same thing. And rather than getting those economies of scale, they were kind of moving backwards from a margins perspective.
Oh, exactly. Because you can't result your way off the ground. I mean, the other thing is you can't, private equity, venture fund, et cetera. You can throw money at it.
Sure.
You can get high caliber people and you can throw money at it and you can expect results, but you end up, again, just like you said, you end up churning through people.
Yep.
Or you get to a point where, when you're cash burning like that and you're just getting whatever result you can, at some point you got to pay the piper and it all catches up to you.
Yeah.
And that's where you see the startups fail. That's where you see new management teams come in and replace because they couldn't get it done. You'll see a lot of founders get ousted out of their businesses because that's how they perform to a certain point. They finally got someone in to buy them, and guess what? The first thing they do is, we can't run the business like this. They push them off to the side and they implement processes, procedures, standardization
Right.
to continue to grow the business. And that's why that doesn't mean it's at the expense of the results. It's when results is the primary driver.
Okay.
Is where a business will always, again, it works until it catches up to you.
Until it doesn't.
It works until it doesn't, and it always catches up to you.
And that's usually a really abrupt and painful shift. All right, so let me reframe my question then. So if you can't...
I want to throw one more thing out there on this.
Go for it.
So a lot of organizations, this is going to sound extremely exaggerated.
Okay.
Results-heavy companies are almost the same as lying, stealing, and cheating.
Ooh.
At some point, it catches up to you. You can't outrun the system, right?
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying companies that are result-heavy are lying, stealing, and cheating. That's not what I'm saying.
All
But
right.
the fallacy of it is it's in the same category in the sense of as you scale and you do that, it has the same effect as there's going to be a ripple effect that has a negative impact on the business, whether it's mass exodus of the employees, mass churn of the customers, or negative profit margins.
All right. So then let me maybe reframe or try my question again. If you can't be overly focused on results and still be a healthy company, then what would results look like for a healthy company? What would a healthy and effective organization do in this results quadrant?
Are you asking what they what it looks like in balance, or what if they are more in balance but still result heavy?
Let's go with the ideal. Let's talk about what would a healthy, effective company do if they were in balance. What would be the kinds of things they would be measuring?
Oh, in that case, I mean, it's just connecting. Begin with the end in mind, right? Steve,
Okay.
begin with the end in mind. Yes, you start with your financials, your P&L. What is it that you want the business to perform and meet to? You got an EBITDA target, profit margins, gross
Right.
profit, et cetera. You start with that. Then you move back into operational metrics that help you achieve that.
Right. So how would we know? Let me rephrase that. So the journey metrics are how will we know if our processes are working effectively?
Correct.
Okay.
And then when you work down from there, it would be how are you holding the people accountable? Or how do the people know the score? How do people know what score, the score of the game, so they know if they're, use football again, right?
If they're playing well.
If you're playing well, you got, in football, you got yards, you've got downs, and you got points on the board.
Sure.
So your people metrics, so they know how much, what yard they're on, what down they're on, and they know who's winning and who's losing.
Right.
And so those people metrics then drive into the operational business metrics, which drive into the P&L. A very results-heavy company will almost just they'll bring that P&L to the bottom, and they'll hold everything accountable to that P&L at the expense of the people and the processes.
So they're probably not paying as much attention to the people metrics or the process metrics or the vision metrics, because we haven't talked about vision metrics.
No, not at all.
Okay, they'll just hammer on the financials.
The vision metric is the in that scenario, the result is the P&L. Everything's driven as a P&L. They'll look at everything in the business like it's a P&L.
Yeah. And having worked for companies like that, work sucks there.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this goes back to kind of what we were talking about when we were talking about vision is you want to sell the company for 10, 15, 20 million dollars.
Right.
But that's not the real reason why. Well, when that is the driver, that becomes the KPIs, the financials become the KPIs, which again, I'm not saying those aren't important. They're very important to the healthy organization, but it's when it's at the expense of everything else and out of balance with the other categories. Now, a good company that's in balance, they have a healthy balance of the people metrics. The metrics correlate to the people that also correlate to the journey that help them achieve the vision, and they actually are seeing, they can see how it's almost like a customer journey. They can almost predict from when a lead enters the customer journey up in marketing.
Right.
They can predict how that's going to flow all the way through sales, marketing, client success, production, whatever the business may be, all the way into the P&L. And when it connects end to end like that and people know how they fit into it, you have a much more scalable, predictable business. The problem is that's not often what we look at because we want revenue now, we want results now.
Sure.
And then when the profit margin erodes away, then we wonder why, and then we just start putting more metrics and more KPIs and more things in. And what you'll end up with is, especially in a result-heavy organization, is you'll end up with so many KPIs and metrics to measure things because there is no process. Like we talked about in Journey, a journey-heavy organization will have so many processes it makes it impossible.
Right.
It's the exact opposite on a result-heavy organization.
Company.
They'll have so many KPIs and metrics, it's almost impossible to move, because if you move one way out of sync, then all of a sudden another metric goes red, or it's impossible.
Yeah. This client that I was working with, there was this funny example where they had created this really great internship program for new hires. And so they were hiring kids right out of college, and they had a very clear success metric. You had to find a problem and give a presentation to the executives within 12 months, or you couldn't get a full-time offer. They never clarified why. They never clarified how. They never clarified, how big of a problem did it have to be? What did you have to do to prove that you had solved it? Everything was about the presentation. And if you didn't do the presentation, that was the That was the metric. Did you do the presentation? And no other explanation was given. And so they had a lot of these interns that were just frustrated. They're like, I want to do this, but I have no idea how to do this, what you're expecting. You just want me to attend a meeting so I can check a box. And it was really interesting how many of the executives were like, yeah, just solve a problem. And the interns needed a vision and a journey and a culture. And the C-suite was just so heavily results. They're just like, I don't care, just do it. Yeah. Just deliver the result. And they were just talking past each other. And there's probably some generational dynamics at play there as well. But it was interesting to see how a results-heavy executive team was just completely missing their entire organization.
I'll tell you another one that's interesting with results-driven organizations. Again, this is most visionaries or leaders are going to be either vision result or vision journey, right? So vision result is pretty common. Mm-hmm. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's when it's all in balance. But when you have a
visionary,
well, I just forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, when you have a results-oriented executive.
I'm totally blank right now.
Okay. Well.
All right. Sorry. What was the question?
If you find a client who is overly results-focused, too focused, imbalanced, and they have that moment of self-awareness where they realize who they are and the fact that that's not always a good thing, what would you recommend to them? Like, what do they need to do to get imbalanced, to get healthy in that?
Well, if you're just an employee for that organization, quit. because there's nothing you can do to fix it.
There's nothing you can do to fix that. Well, what if it's somebody in the C-suite though?
True. I'm trying to think about this because the podcast is Help Work Not Suck. So
sure.
On a broader audience, the thing is when you're in that results heavy organization, work sucks because it feels like you're being held accountable. You're being not just held accountable. You're held to an expectation that's unrealistic. The best thing you can do if you're in that scenario is try to figure out how you can relate a process that can deliver that result. And if you can walk it back, most visionaries, most executives, at the end of the day, it's not that they don't care about the journey or the process. What they care about is the result.
Right.
But it's not that they don't care about the process. Most of the time they do care about the process. They just don't tell you that part.
Yeah.
Or it's de-emphasized because the result, what you remember, is the result. And so the best thing you can do, it doesn't matter if you're the lowest person on the totem pole or somewhere in between there in upper management, the best thing you can do is describe how a process can deliver that result. And show that how going through that process gets there. If you're on the other side of the equation and your people are screaming more SOPs and you're frustrated with the results, just simply say, show me a process that's going to deliver the result.
Yeah.
Too often we focus on the result as opposed to the journey to get there. And 9 times out of 10, someone can tell you how a process can deliver that result and the steps it's going to take to get there.
Right.
And most visionary business owners, executives, if you just let the employee define the process and hold them to the result, it actually works out. But it's too often we look just at the result at the expense of the process. What you'll find is once you start getting in balance, you need less KPIs, less metrics, less things because you're not compensating for the lack of process.
Interesting. So it reminds me of a quote. I'm going to give credit to James Clear. I'm not sure if it's him, but it sounds like him. He says, goals are for people who want to win once. Systems are for people who want to win over and over and over again. And I think that results-focused people tend to want to win, but they need those systems, processes, standard operating procedure people to help them build the system so they can win over and over and over again. And maybe that's the difference between being a healthy and an unhealthy results-focused person.
Exactly. And a lot of results individuals individuals, even organizations, they value the track star.
Sure.
And so, if you ever seen a track team, there's a lot of people on the team, but they don't, other than like a relay race, for the most part, there is no team on a track team. They're just a bunch of individuals competing in their individual event. And if everybody scores high enough, you might get a team score. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter.
Right. Because you can fall on your face. And if I win the race, I can still go to state regardless of how good or bad you are.
Right.
So my success isn't dependent on you.
Right. And that's also where a lot of sales-centric organizations that are very sales and heavy sales focused.
Sure.
Because again, at the end of the day, if your commission and my commission are totally unrelated to each other, if I outsell and I get a high commission, it doesn't matter what you make.
Yeah.
And I'm not incentivized to help you. I'm incentivized to sell more.
Maximize your own score.
And exactly.
Right.
And that's where it's out of balance. That's where, and then of course you go the other direction, and you have you get into the scenario where it's okay, we're a team and we all pull commission from the pool.
Right.
Well, there's always going to be one guy or gal that's going to not pull their weight but get the commission, and then
Sure.
everybody's pissed off at that person.
Yep.
So that's where that's where everybody goes, well, this team thing doesn't work. Screw this. We're going back to individual performance results. It's because you don't have balance.
Yeah. You got to have the balance of the two.
And it is okay to have a commission structure where, maybe there's a quota for the team, and if the team hits above a threshold, then it unlocks a pool for the team.
Okay.
And then there's a individual one. So individual results have to hit. So you can hit your target and everybody else can hit their target. Well, if everybody in the team hits their target, which means the whole it's win or lose as a team, unlocks the pool.
Interesting. All right.
But if the team doesn't hit it, then you as an individual are still incentivized to hit your targets.
Right. Yeah. So there needs to be that balance across the processes and the results. It's good.
Yes.
Work sucks when you're paying a health and effectiveness tax. If you want your organization to become more healthy and effective, check out the resources on our website.